Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 5, Episode 21, The Opposite. Hi, everyone. It is the season finale for Season 5. I'm so excited. I can't believe I'm at the end of Season 5 now. We've done it, you guys. I mean, I don't know what you did. I mean, you listened, which I really appreciate, but I did a lot of work. So quite frankly, I think I deserve most of the credit here. Wow. And I'm going to give it to myself. I'm patting myself on the back right now. 5 seasons and 4 more to go after this. So that is extremely exciting. Well, not to bring down the excitement about the season 5 finale and my accomplishment. I guess this could kind of be an accomplishment. Well, according to Greg, I think it is. Our contributor, Greg, who has his own segment now called Greg's Sack Lunch, he's accused this podcast, Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast, of sort of being a curse to some of the Seinfeld actors. Well, basically, a lot of people have died since I've started this podcast. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a fair assessment, but we do have one more person to add. Last week, Raquel Welch passed away. Now, she was 82 years old. She lived a long life, an esteemed career. Her appearance on Seinfeld in Season 8 is one of my favorites. She's absolutely fantastic. But is it the curse? I mean, now I just can't help but think about that. Greg messaged me the day of and said, Shivani strikes again. And I mean, I just didn't realize I had this much power with this microphone in front of me, in my closet of all places, to inflict death to many of our beloved Seinfeld guest stars and series regulars. I mean, I don't know what to say, you guys. I'll try my best to just, keep the main 4 alive. I'm not sure how I will do that, but you know what? I have the power apparently to kill a bunch of them. So I'll see what I can do about keeping them alive. We must especially protect JLD at all costs. I think we can all agree with that. But other than that, I will look into it. I don't know a lot about curses. I can research it. I'm sure there's a lot of very reliable information on the internet. So, that's just, it's an unexpected burden I have taken on, but take it on I will. All right, let's get into this season finale. The synopsis for The Opposite is as follows. George finds love and success by doing the opposite of what instincts would normally have him do. Elaine's fortunes reverse after she buys a box of Jujyfruits. Jerry's luck remains unchanged as usual. Kramer appears on Live with Regis and Kathy Lee to promote his coffee table book. This episode was written by Andy Cohen, Larry David, and Jerry Seinfeld. All right, we start out the episode. First, we have a quick moment with George just looking out onto the ocean. He's just staring off and looks like he's really deep in thought. Then we go to Pendant, where Lipman and Elaine are popping some champagne. They're celebrating her promotion. Oh, she is so excited. She thanks Mr. Lipman, but of course she deserves it. And he says, "You're really on your way now." And we get this huge screech by Elaine. Oh, that probably hurt your ears. I'm sorry. And then Lipman starts coughing violently, and Elaine says, "You should really do something about that cold." My take on this scene, super quick scene, but a fun one with JLD's excited Elaine performance. And I have to say, it's a nice culmination, albeit temporary, to all of the struggles we have seen Elaine go through with her job thus far. Early on, she basically has no money, and then she gets screwed a couple of times in her job by Rava and then Toby. And now it looks like it's finally working out. It looks like. So this scene is very much setting up Elaine's plot and also foreshadowing a bit with Lipman's cold. And we know his cold will have a big part in her career, unfortunately. All right, next we are at Monk's. Jerry asks about her raise and she says, "I don't fool around, baby." And he thought that pendant was in financial trouble. And she says, yes, they were, but they're being absorbed by a big Japanese conglomerate, which means Kramer's coffee table book will definitely happen. And Jerry also mentions how she's back together with Jake Jarmel. And Elaine says, yeah, it's getting serious. We're talking about moving in together. And he says, wow, you really have it all. Helen Gurley Brown would be proud. I won't go into who Helen Gurley Brown is, but she sort of coined this whole concept of women can have it all. And that's a whole other podcast of how much I hate that, so I'm just not going to get into it. But Google her if you want. George enters, speaking of having it all. He was at the beach. Oh, the beach. He's very depressed. Why did it turn out like this for me? I had so much promise. I was bright. Maybe not academically speaking. And basically, George says that every decision has been wrong in his life. His life has turned out pretty much the complete opposite of what he wanted it to be. A waitress comes up and rattles off his usual. He says, no. You know what? Nothing has worked out for me with tuna on toast. So he orders the opposite. Instead of tuna, he gets chicken salad on rye, untoasted, potato salad, and a cup of tea. Well, there's no telling what can happen from this. Jerry unnecessarily points out that salmon is the opposite of tuna because they swim against the current and the tuna swim with it. Good for the tuna. As they're having their tuna salmon discussion, Elaine notices that a woman at the counter was looking at George, so she tells him. He says, so what? And she tells him, go talk to her. Elaine, bold men with no job and no money who live with their parents don't approach strange women. And Jerry says, well, you should do the opposite. If every instinct you have is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right. This is Jerry Seinfeld's favorite line, by the way. He says that in the commentary. Well, that does convince George, so he goes up to her. Turns out that she was looking at him just because he ordered the same exact lunch as her. Well, George pushes forward and says, I'm George. I'm unemployed and I live with my parents. I'm Victoria. Hi. It's a great moment. The actress who plays Victoria is Dee Pfeiffer. She has acted in many television shows and films, including being a series regular on Sybil, which was a sitcom starring Sybil Shepherd. She also is the younger sister of Michelle Pfeiffer and starred with her big sister on Up Close and Personal and Frankie and Johnny. I thought this was interesting. She took a break from Hollywood for 10 years to get her master's in social work. I thought that was pretty cool. I think she's fine as Victoria. There's nothing too interesting about the character or her performance, to be honest. She's not bad, but she's just, she's totally fine. I will say I do like her delivery of, I'm Victoria, hi. My take on the scene, we get so many fun moments in this scene. First is Elaine's hair moment. I love her hair down. I mean, I know it was like this in the previous scene, but I'm just mentioning it now. We get to enjoy it longer in this scene. I just love her hair down. I think we're starting to transition to, kind of dissolving the wall of hair. I mean, she still does it. Don't get me wrong. We're not totally out of the wall of hair. We haven't escaped the wall yet, but we're getting there. She's experimenting with different hairstyles, which I applaud. The general vibe of Elaine in this scene is wonderful. She's just feeling herself. She's giddy. I love it. I love that she's just basking in the glow of her life going so well. It's just such a lovely, we see this lovely start and we know how it just kind of keeps getting chipped away throughout this episode. It's such a fun journey for JLD to play, but I'll get more into that later. We get some amazing face acting. I've always noticed this with JLD when George is talking about how his life turned out so terribly. That little wince that she gives when he says, I was bright. She's like, well, maybe not academically speaking. Then she's like, all right, there you go. I also love that it's Elaine telling George about the woman looking at him and then also her pushing him to go talk to her. They have their combative moments, this brother-sister relationship, but these little tastes of support, I love that too about their relationship. They have each other's backs. All right, next we are in Jerry's apartment. Jerry's on the phone. He's upset about a gig getting canceled. Kramer enters and is so excited about his book being a go and that he's going to start the book tour. First stop, Regis and Kathy Lee. And Jerry's like, hey, you can borrow my puffy shirt. No, I don't need that. Jerry gets another call. It's another job for the same weekend, same money. And Kramer points out, you're even Steven. All right, next we are in George's car. He's on the date with Victoria. She asks if he's growing a beard. Well, I shave every day. Just grows right back. I guess that's true. And he tells her, I'm not really interested in how I present myself. If those superficialities are important to you, this is not going to work. And then a car cuts him off, and she gets very upset. Did you see that? And George's opposite response, take it easy. Take it easy. It's not the end of the world. All right, next we're at the movie theater on their date. There are these obnoxious guys behind George and Victoria. Oh my gosh, they're just saying really lewd and vulgar things. Yeah, stick your tongue down his throat. And they're laughing. Victoria says to George, what do we do? Should we move? George says, that won't be necessary. Shut your traps and stop kicking the seats. We get an amazing George monologue yelling at these guys. He goes off on them and scares them and gets an applause from the rest of the moviegoers. And then finally on their date, we are back in George's car. Victoria is trying to get him to come upstairs. It's only 9:30. He says, I don't really think we should. We don't know each other very well. Who are you, George Costanza? I'm the opposite of every guy you've ever met. All right, next we are at the movie theater, this time with Elaine. The theater manager has a message for Elaine, says that Jake was in an accident. He got sideswiped by a cab. He's okay, but he is in St. Vincent Hospital, room 907. Elaine is about to leave, but then turns to the counter and orders a box of Jujyfruits. My take on the scene, super short scene, but I've always loved the way she asks for her Jujyfruits. It always gets me. All right, next we're at the hospital. Jake is in the bed. He's telling Elaine what happened. He clearly had the right of way, but the cab just went right into his hip. She's wolfing down the Jujyfruits and talking with her mouth full. That is so terrible, Jake. It's so terrible. People are so stupid. Such sickening. She notices him looking at her candy and offers him one. You want one? Jake's like, where did you get those? At the movies. Well, didn't the manager tell you about my accident before you went in? Yeah, he did. So when did you get those? Right after that. Uh-oh. Jake is so upset, so offended. He's like, you found out I was in an accident and then you stopped off for candy? And she's trying to explain, but he's already on a tirade. He's like, I would have thought this news would have sent you running out of the building, but apparently it had no effect on you. And she's like, no, it did. And that if she were in an accident, he wouldn't stop off for Jujyfruit. And he pretty much kicks her out. I'd like to be alone now, but Jake, good night. My take on this scene, oh my gosh, here we are treated to mouthful acting by JLD. Who knew she could do this so well? I absolutely love it. Big surprise. I mean, there are really sort of 3 stars to this scene. There's Jake, there's Elaine, and there's the Jujyfruit. I love that she's wolfing it down to the point that it's distracting to him. He can't help but notice that, she can't help but, shovel this stuff in her mouth. The moment when Elaine is caught is so fantastic. Right after that, I love how she's trying to explain, well, the counter is right there. But also we know what she did. We see her very deliberately make that choice to, albeit for a few seconds, turn around and order the Jujyfruit instead of just going off to the hospital. Now, in her defense, the manager did tell her that Jake was okay. So it's not as if she found out he was in some kind of awful accident with a terrible head injury or he was unconscious or something. She knew he was okay. But of course, from Jake's point of view, it's pretty inconsiderate. I remember being like, gosh, is he overreacting? But then I remembered that he had to deal with Elaine's insane exclamation point drama the last time. So they're probably on par with the overreactions here. I think Jake is probably a little bit more justified. And just something I have to say too, I love that they gave this screw up to Elaine. So often in sitcoms, the gender roles are played to such, stereotypical levels, which would include the dudes being super insensitive or selfish and hurting the woman's feelings. But here, our Lainey is guilty of that. And the man, Jake, is upset by the insensitivity. So it's such a great flip and so rare to see, especially on a sitcom in the 90s. And not to jump ahead, but this was a George move on her part. We know what she says at the end about turning into George. This was a very George move of her, but done in an Elaine specific way. Maybe George would have gotten a pastrami sandwich or nachos or something, but no, for Elaine, she needed to pause her trip to the hospital for some Jujyfruit. All right, next we are at Jerry's apartment. It's just a really quick scene where another example of him breaking even at his poker game. Right, then we move on to Regis and Kathy Lee, Kramer's appearance. Regis doesn't know about him. He could be a little bonkos, and he says bonkos about 14 times. Kramer comes out, a lot of swagger, and kisses Kathy Lee very, very passionately. Kind of inappropriate, I think. So the interview's pretty much going well until Kramer takes a sip of the coffee. Apparently it's gross, and he spits it out all over them, both Regis and Kathy Lee, and more specifically, all over her Kathy Lee casuals. Now, the actress here is Kathy Lee Gifford. Now, I'm sure most of you recognize who Kathy Lee Gifford is, but in the interest of fairness, I wanted to include her in my female highlight reel for the show. She is technically an actress as well as a producer and vocal artist, but I think she's best known for just being herself on television on both Regis and Kathy Lee, and then alongside Hoda Kotb on the fourth hour of the Today Show for many years. I like her appearance in this episode. You can totally see her breaking, but actually she's always been a bit like that on the Regis and Kathy Lee show. I, side note, loved Regis and Kathy Lee growing up. I mean, I was like a teenager, early teens, but yet, I don't know. There was something about them. They were very entertaining to me. So if I didn't sleep in too late on summer mornings, I always loved a dose of Reg and Kathy Lee. They were a delight. I do love her delivery of all over my Kathy Lee casuals. Although I think the Kathy Lee casuals were the ones with all the controversy, all the kids in the sweatshops. Yikes, Kathy Lee. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Elaine tells Jerry it's over with her and Jake. Yeah, it got pretty nasty. Jerry needs clarification. You went back for Jujyfruit? Elaine defends herself. Look, it's not like I went across the street. The counter was right there, and then she got into a cab. Well, why didn't you eat it in the cab? Jerry asks. Well, I got popcorn too. I ate that first. She asks Jerry what's all over the table, and he says, he played poker last night and that he broke even. She says he always breaks even, and he agrees he always evens out, gives a bunch of examples. So she asks for $20. He's like, what for? No, just give me $20. She tosses a $20 bill out the window. What the hell was that? Let's see if you get the $20 back. You could have done that with a pencil to see if it comes back too. Oh, Elaine's so bummed. Everything was going so well. She had that job promotion. They were talking about moving in together. And Jerry's like, well, next time someone's in a serious accident, maybe you won't stop off for candy first. George enters. Hey, I just found $20. George is, basically busting. This opposite thing couldn't be working out better. And Victoria's uncle works for the Yankees, going to get him a job interview. I mean, the New York Yankees, it's a childhood dream. And this is no longer just a crazy notion. This opposite lifestyle is, Jerry, Elaine, this is my religion. As they're all leaving to probably go to Monk's, Jerry finds a $20 bill in his jacket pocket, and it freaks Elaine out. Oh my God. My take on this scene, I just love the reveal that Elaine got popcorn as well as the Jujyfruits and ate that in the cab first. Oh, it is such a fun moment of JLD's delivery of that line. It's so fun, just so guilty that, because I got popcorn too, I ate that first. So cute. I also love Jerry's disapproving look right after she says that, come on. Speaking of looks and expressions, Elaine's face after she throws the $20 bill out the window has always cracked me up. She's just so pleased with herself. Her eyes are all big, her mouth's open. So it's just such an interesting choice. And I absolutely always thought that's so funny. So just to kind of track how Elaine's life is going in this episode, she still has her job promotion going for her, but her love life has taken a bad turn. But I think she's still, you can tell she's not totally broken. She still has some mojo going there, but we know that's going to change. All right, next we are in Lipman's office. A very coughing, very sick Lipman tells Kramer he cannot do any more TV appearances because of his disastrous appearance on Regis and Kathy Lee. Kramer's so bummed. Lipman keeps coughing and coughing to the point where Kramer just falls out of his chair. All right, next we're at Yankee Stadium. George is having his interview, and of course he's being very honest at this Yankee interview. Usually we know that George just lies his ass off in these interviews. I mean, he's just open. He was fired for having sex on his desk with the cleaning woman. He quit his other job because his boss in real estate wouldn't let him use his private bathroom. Victoria's uncle's like, do you talk to everyone like this? My niece told me you were a little different. Well, George Steinbrenner comes by, so he introduces George to him. George gives him a piece of his mind. George Steinbrenner loves it and says, "Hiya, this man." Next, we're in Elaine's office. Elaine's assistant buzzes that Tina is there to see her. She explains to the coworker in her office that it's a woman she's been subletting her apartment from. As her coworker walks out, he says hi to Tina, and she says, "Please." Tina comes in and informs Elaine that she's getting kicked out of the building. Elaine can't believe it, but apparently there's been a number of complaints. Like she buzzed up a jewel thief, she let in some Jehovah's Witnesses, and they couldn't get them out of the building. Oh yeah, what else? And then Tina takes a whole list out from her purse. My take on this scene, how I love Siobhan Fallon. Even this short scene is such a gift. I just wish this wasn't her last appearance as Tina. She's so good. I mean, just from the first word, please. Why does she have to be so rude to that guy? It doesn't make sense, but it's hilarious. And she and JLD are so fantastic together. I could have watched so much of this scene just going back and forth. And guess what? There is a lot more back and forth in the deleted scenes, and I'll get to that later. Anyway, it's a short scene, and its purpose is to show the next big blow in Elaine's life, losing her apartment. And I don't know, there's not much more I can say except that Siobhan Fallon makes a meal, like a Thanksgiving feast out of this entire scene. That's the mark of a truly great comedic, well, I guess any actress, but in a scene that's like less than 2 minutes long and you make such a mark like Siobhan Fallon does, it's like, wow, that's some talent right there. All right, next we're at Monk's. Rachel breaks up with Jerry, and he's fine. He'll meet someone else. You will. Yeah, it all evens out for me, he says. Anyway, it's been really nice dating you for a while, and good luck. And she's like, yeah, you too. He walks out singing, "She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes." All right, next we are at Jerry's apartment. George got the job. He's busting still. Jerry can't believe it. And George is moving out of his parents' place. He's back in business, baby. Elaine enters and doesn't really care for George yelling hey at her. She's extremely stressed out. Jerry asks, how are things going? I'll tell you how things are going. I am getting kicked out of my apartment. Why are they doing that? I don't know. They've got a list of grievances. The jewel thief? Yeah, the jewel thief. Anyway, she's got to be out by the end of the month. George suggests that she moves in with his parents. Elaine approaches. Was that the opposite of what you were going to say? Or was that your natural instinct? George says, instinct. Stick with the opposite, with a big old thump on his head. Jerry's like, everything will even out because, hey, I have two friends, and if one's up, one's going to be down. Really makes no sense. My take on this scene, the scene is so effective because of the different energies in the room. So Jerry, Elaine, and George are all representing what they feel in that moment, and it just works so well. The premise of this episode is so well done when it comes to George and Elaine, especially. I mean, their arcs are like passing each other in reverse. It's just fascinating to see, and what a brilliant device to write an episode around. I mean, how fun is this? They just have to have both of these characters have reverse luck and just like keep passing each other throughout, different scenes. It's just wonderful. That line of George offering his parents' place is one of the best moments of the series, in my opinion. I just think it's so natural, like something a person would say. You could move in with my parents. And I love that Elaine gets to do the head thump there. Like, that's such a classic Frank move for George. And that he doesn't even try to fight it. George knows he screwed up. He shouldn't have said that. And then Jerry trying to swoop in there. I mean, he seems to like come in to try and comfort her, but then he just ends up explaining that he is still evening out. That little look of surprise that Elaine gives at the end is really funny. Like, wait, what? This is about you? You're just evening out here with your friends? I don't give a shit. All right, next we are in Elaine's office. Lippman is in her office with her, and she's chewing away on some Jujyfruit. Someone comes by to tell Mr. Lippman that the men from Matsushima are there. And Lippman's like, whew, all right, I gotta go. And you know what? Without them, we would have been out on the street. He's still extremely sick, we can tell. And he walks out without his handkerchief. Elaine's trying to get his attention, but she has too many Jujyfruit in her mouth for her to, like, say it out loud too well. Mr. Lippman, you forgot a handkerchief. Then we see Lippman walk by his office and sneeze, but he doesn't have his handkerchief to kind of wipe up any of the germs. And the Japanese businessmen go in for a handshake, this really enthusiastic deal they're making. But Mr. Lippman's trying to explain, I can't, gerbs, I can't shake your hand. Oh, insults them, and, well, the deal is off. My take on this scene, it's just pure silliness here, and I love it. I mean, JLD is so great, trying to act so honest and grounded with like 4 pounds of Jujyfruit in your mouth. And there's actually a great blooper of it too, where she just keeps saying, it's on my desk. Like, it's so funny, and she just starts laughing, and I think she's on her way to spit it out too. All right, next we are at the Costanza's house. George is moving out. He tells his parents before he leaves that, he loves them very, very much. Jerry points out to Kramer, opposite. All right, next we are at Monk's. Elaine is explaining to Jerry and Kramer, she must have had 8 Jujyfruit in her mouth. She couldn't talk. And Jerry asks the very obvious question, why do you have to eat so many? They're Jujyfruit. I like them. And she says, how was I supposed to know that it would cause a chain reaction that would lead to the downfall of Pendant Publishing? And not to mention the downfall of Kramer's book. Oh, Kramer is so pissed. You knew he had a cold. How'd you expect him to blow his nose? Yeah. Then Elaine has a realization. Do you know what's going on here? Do you see what's happened? I've become George. Jerry shakes his head. Don't say that. It's true. I'm George. Just then, speak of the devil, George walks in wearing a swanky double-breasted suit. Greetings. He's got all this swagger. He orders his opposite usual now, the chicken salad. Hey, you know what I get, sweetheart. And then he talks about how he just had a conversation with Mr. Don Mattingly. Jerry is trying to put money down for the bill, and Kramer tells him, no, it's too much. Jerry says, let's call it even. My take on this last scene of season 5, there's just nothing better than, like, Elaine trying not to cry. They're Jujyfruit. I like them. It's easily one of my top moments of the series. I love how she says that. She just looks so small and fragile when she says it. It's like adorably hilarious. So we see in this scene the sort of culmination of her downfall, complete with her flat ponytail, her glasses, her dumpy jean jacket, and that juxtaposition to George walking in with his fancy suit in a great mood. What a wonderful way to end the season. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side. You know him as one of the most prolific mystery food humorist writers of all time. His novels have made your mouth water and your brain say, what? In his first novel in 7 years, Jake Jarmel has strayed from his usual gourmet enigmas for something far more personal. Join me, Jacinda Cooper, for an exclusive interview with the elusive author about his 15th book, Jujyfruit of Betrayal. Tell me, Jake, what is your beef with Jujyfruits? Well, I'm not sure I have a beef with Jujyfruits per se, Jacinda, but, the Jujyfruits in my book, they represent something far deeper. Trust, compassion, hope, dreams, deception, the fabric of all, love and romance, and, of course, betrayal. Well, that's a lot to put on a little chewy candy, Jake. Is it? Well, it's also a lot to put on a man's chewy heart, too. I ask Jake the question on everyone's mind. Could this be a work of retaliation against his former editor and lover, Elaine Bennis, who, without his permission, released his exclamation point-laden novel, What's with the Clark Bar, last year? Oh, God, don't be ridiculous, Jacinda. Well, but Jake, her name in the novel is Shalane Tennis. And what's your point? This is the hard-hitting interview the world's been waiting for. Tune in to the Jacinda Cooper Show at midnight next Sunday on 890 AM radio to hear from Jake Jarmel in his own words. Jujyfruit of Betrayal hits your bookstores this spring, and one thing's for sure, you'll never look at Jujyfruits the same again. The Jacinda Cooper Show exclusive interview with Jake Jarmel by Jacinda Cooper. Don't miss it. It only airs once, and I don't know how to post anything on the internet. And we're back. All right, there was an inside look for this episode, and there was a little part with JLD where she talks about how she loves playing the sad sack character. She liked that Elaine had all this misfortune. It was really fun to play. And she kind of points out, too, she's like, although nothing really great ever happens to the four of these people, unless it's at the expense of someone else. The deleted scene that I really liked, that I referred to earlier, that scene with Tina. So additional things that got cut out, but that Tina brought up to Elaine. She has annoying wind chimes. She feeds the pigeons on the windowsill. Elaine's like, they're hungry. The Canadian quarters. And she's like, you can't use them anywhere else, Tina. Elaine, you know they're not worth as much as American quarters. Then why are they the same size? So it was a little bit longer back and forth and super fun. I would have taken a lot more of Siobhan Fallon. Okay, I'll stop gushing about Siobhan Fallon, but I think you all know, and I think you all understand why I love her so much. I thought this was kind of interesting. In the notes about nothing, the script originally called for Elaine to go back for goobers instead of Jujyfruit, but they changed it to a chewy candy so that she could have that issue with Mr. Lippman later. Kind of would make more sense. You know, I guess you could maybe not speak so well with a bunch of goobers in your mouth. That sounds weird. But yeah, I think Jujyfruits work better. All right, now it's time to open Greg's sack lunch. All right, first in the sack is Greg's favorite scene. This is what Greg had to say about that. Elaine and George dominate this episode. When don't they? And they both play into the opposite thing so very well. George's plot comes with more obvious laughs, but Elaine's downfall is so funny to see as it happens in one instance after another. It's hard to top when she's looking like a schlub in the diner exclaiming, I'm George, while at the same time George is living his best life. My favorite scene overall is George telling off the guys in the movie theater when they're kicking the seats. It's so relatable, and as a guy, you have those moments where you don't necessarily have the courage to confront meatheads who may want to fight you. I also love the scene with the Costanzas when George is moving out. Okay, I don't have a favorite scene. Every single scene is 10 out of 10. I can totally relate, Greg. This is a top-notch episode. Very few things that I would change about it. And yes, it's not an Elaine scene, but it has to be mentioned because Jason Alexander, this is a George episode. I mean, you can't deny it. The opposite is pretty much encompassing mostly just George's storyline. But yeah, the shut traps and stop kicking the seats. I mean, and like the peaks and valleys of where he goes in that little monologue. Just try me. And then the way he says, because I would love it. I mean, it's all amazing. And yeah, I'm not confrontational. I rarely would do anything like this. So bravo to George. And I love that he has that vindication with everyone, applauding at the end. It's good moment for George. And he deserves it. All right, next in Greg's sack, his favorite Elaine moment. There are so many, he says. I actually will have to say my favorite moment of Elaine is at the very beginning with Lipman when they're toasting her promotion. She is purely joyous in celebration, and it's nice to see some acknowledgement that she's great at her job. We see George's failures. We see Jerry, clearly successful as a comic, but we are finally seeing Elaine actually getting a more realistic version of a corporate ladder climb here. She's good at her job. Also, the hair change here is much more telling as it shows more professionalism. She is a boss bitch, as the kids say. What's interesting is her hair reverts to the big wall later on and then ultimately the lazy pulled back look. Her hair is failing backwards too. I also love when George suggests she moves in with his parents and she says, "Is that what you were going to say or your natural instinct?" Stick with the opposite, and then hits his head. Just so beyond funny. Wow. Well, we may as well have been in a cave, Greg, because I feel like we're echoing each other back and forth here. Yes, isn't that so funny? Like all the different elements, her wardrobe, her hair, everything that's changing as her luck is, as just shitting the bed. I mean, it's these are the little details that make these episodes and these types of shows sing and just soar ahead of so many other things on TV because that attention to detail makes such a difference. And going back to what you said about her career, yeah, I do like that. And like I said earlier, like we're finally seeing it pay off. We've seen her struggle. We're finally getting that celebration moment in the beginning. Again, temporary, but still satisfying to see. All right, let's move on to Greg's scene swap. He says, "I can't take anything out of this episode. The whole even-Stevenness of Jerry's life and his friends works so well as a plot line. Kramer's story is always the weakest, but he needs something to do, and even his scenes are great." Agreed again. I don't have any scene swap ideas for this episode as well. All right. Oh my gosh. Oh, you guys, hang on. I'm looking in the sack, Greg's sack here. Oh my God, there's extra thoughts. All right, let's dive into these extra thoughts in the sack. He says, "It was so great to see Regis Philbin in this episode. Fun fact, I was a contestant on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in August of 2000 when I was 20 years old, the youngest contestant to make it to the hot seat at that point. I left with only $1,000, but I will tell you Regis was the absolute nicest man, and to this day, even after meeting many celebrities over the years, he is my absolute favorite. So kind to me before, during, and after the show. I will remember that day for the rest of my life." Another thought, Paul Gleason plays the guy who hires George at the Yankees. While the other actors that come in playing George's bosses are great, Paul Gleason is a legend, and I wish we could have had more with him. Siobhan Fallon comes back as Elaine's roommate, who I totally forgot about. The way she speaks is so funny to me. Even the way she says, "That's why there's a buzzer." The best line of the whole episode for me is the New York Yankees, Ruth, Gehrig, DiMaggio, Mantle, Costanza. This is such a great George moment. I'm genuinely happy for him. One last thing. Rest in peace, Raquel Welch, the latest on Shivani's spree. Oh, geez. We've yet to see her appearance on the show, but it's a memorable one. Okay, I've gone on for far too long and am now realizing this is one of the best episodes of the series. Thank you for indulging me. Well, I liked a lot of what was in your sack, Greg, but I told you guys, I knew Greg was going to accuse me of murdering Raquel Welch with my podcast. And for those of you who may not know, I don't read Greg's thoughts until I'm sitting here recording, so it's all a surprise to me as I'm reading it. But back to your other non-accusatory, very insensitive towards me thoughts. Yeah. Oh, I know I knew that about you being on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I forgive me. I kind of forgot that. But then, it's always fun to be reminded of that. That's so nice to know, though. I love when you hear about celebrities actually being nice people. I think a lot of times you hear the opposite. And that's the whole thing, never meet your heroes, because a lot of times they'll probably disappoint you. But that's really nice to know. That's nice that Regis was such a nice and caring person. And yes, I did not mention Paul Gleason. So one of my favorite movies of all time is The Breakfast Club. Paul Gleason plays the principal in that movie, and I absolutely love him. I agree. I wish they would have brought him back. Yeah, that would have been a real treat if Paul Gleason had a recurring character at the Yankees. And yeah, Siobhan Fallon, we are so on the same page. I forgot about that's what there's a buzzer. Just amazing. I can't start up again, you guys, because I've gone too much. I've gone on too much about her. So I will stop. And thank you for indulging me with all of that. All right. Thank you, Greg, for all your thoughts. And now it's time to close Greg's sack. Lunch. All right. My favorite Elaine moment, I have to say, when her mouth is full of Jujyfruits and she's trying to call for Mr. Lipman to get us handkerchief. Not much else to say about that, except it just makes me laugh how full her mouth is. All right, my final notes. This is the best Elaine plot up until this point. I mean, just bar none. What a fun arc, complete with such an amazing range of emotions she gets to play. And the fact that it's happening in reverse to George, which is the Elaine-George relationship, best relationship on the show. It's just genius. It's those two characters with these reverse arcs. Fantastic. I mean, when I think about all the piddly Elaine plots we've had to deal with, I won't say they were worth it. But this plot with the opposite has certainly made up for a lot of the JLD underutilization of the past episodes. Just such a gift of a storyline. And it sets up the next season so well. Larry David says in the commentary that, they knew they would have to start the new season 6, with a new chapter for the Elaine character and her career. And they didn't know what it was, but that was something they had to think about over the summer. And so I think that's pretty cool. So overall, this episode is so much fun, so many incredible moments, and just the perfect way to end a season. And I think that's all I can say about the opposite. Thank you guys so much. I want to remind everyone to follow Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis podcast on social media. On Instagram, it's at Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, it's at Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you'd like to email the podcast, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to take a week off between seasons. So there will be no new episode next week. But I'll come back the week after with season 6. I'm super excited. Thank you again for listening, and I will see you next time.